Welcome, Neville, to the What podcast. So nice to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'd love to start by just giving you a chance to introduce yourself to our audience, and then we'll get into it.
All right. So Neville Wright. I'm a so I call it my big three. I'm a speed and strength coach, working with like I guess varsity to elite level athletes. I'm a performance and recovery therapist, so working same kind of level of individuals, like but mainly I guess in the range of active individuals to elite level. And then I also do public speaking currently right now. Prior to my life before that, I was an athlete for almost 20 years. I competed for Canada in both track and field and bobsleigh.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Easy. Oh, you have to share about you went to the Olympics, right?
Yes, yeah. So I competed in Canada. I went to World Championships for Canada. So as a 4x1 relay member, and I also went to World University Games in the 100
Hmm.
meters and won a bronze medal there. And then
Okay.
I made the transition to bobsleigh, where I competed in five World Championships and three Olympic Games. So the
Wow.
2010, 2014, and 2018.
Right. Amazing. Yeah. So, so it's so nice to see that you've actually continued your love of sport and training to be able to, to help others. So then tell me, what is it that you love about what you do?
You know what? I realized that and it wasn't even on purpose, but there's one thing I always liked to do was to help individuals achieve higher levels of performance or tap into their potential. And
Mm.
I think between the coaching, the speaking, and the therapy, they all had something in common, which was helping others. So I think that's where it's something I guess I can't really escape, or I end up falling into that those categories of just always helping other people. So I think that's kind of like a passion of mine, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
I guess so you became, well, I mean, I'm sure you were probably coaching before you ever came to Coach Academy. What drew you to, to get into the professional training of coaching?
So I knew that I guess I had you have different phases in life, at least for me, and I knew that eventually I'd start to transition some of the other some of the areas I'm in. I really enjoy doing public speaking. No, I do like anything from like corporate to schools, different events, things like that. And I one of the things that I really enjoyed doing as well is mentoring as well. So I was like, I was trying to find something that I was still able to do that. And originally I was actually looking at potentially going back to school to do psychology. So working towards like being a sports psych or mental performance coach. And then I did a lot of research and I was lucky to have a pretty good network of individuals and that I connected with, like, sports psychs, people that in mental performance coaching, all sorts of areas. And I thought about doing coaching before, but I wasn't sure. And then after having conversations with some of these other individuals, they're like, like while I would be good for sports psych with my background, they're like, you could actually do coaching and there's different forms of coaching because they I was introduced about the ICF coaching and
Mhm.
then I did some more research and then found the leadership and performance coaching program, which I thought was kind of like right up my alley, and a perfect fit for what I wanted to do.
Oh, okay. There's so much I want to ask you. Okay, so the very first thing I'm thinking of is like, we'll get to coaching later. I want to understand, what do you think is the um like, what does somebody need to be so committed to a sport, to be so committed to performance and outdoing yourself and, and competing? Like, what is that mental toughness you're talking about? What does it require?
Um, so one the I always talk about three main things that's really important in regards to trying to achieve high performance, especially like for in sport. And one is, first of all, you have to like believe that you can actually do it.
Mm,
But you always hear the saying how believe and you can achieve. And I truly believe that. However, I find that it's always incomplete, where it's like, you have to have belief, but it has to be complemented with the work that has to go in, and you have to be willing to do that work. And then heart. And heart is so important because the life, especially as an athlete, for myself, trying to achieve high performance isn't easy, and you have to have that heart to where when it gets tough, to be able to pick yourself up and keep going, or not quitting on yourself if you experience disappointments or failure. So those are the three main things that I go by, and then just like a desire to want to do something great, or just improve. So
mhm.
I was always challenging myself, to whether I was in the gym, lifting, whether I was sprinting. I was always trying to beat myself and be better than myself.
Mm. It's funny. I was actually having a conversation today with someone who was considering coaching, and the person said, I they were playing basketball actually for their most of their high school, a young person, 27. And he said, when I was playing basketball, I knew exactly what I wanted. I knew that I wanted to, you know, go, I don't know, the scales of basketball, wherever he went. But there was always some other, achievement to make. And, but he said, now I'm in a space in my life where I don't know what the goal is anymore. So I know I have the drive, but I can't determine what the goal is. So what do you think is, your role as a coach now, or now what coaching is, and what do you think, how can you help people clarify their goals? Like, what is the importance of clarifying goals? I guess is the question.
Yeah. I don't know the importance of that. So I think, so there's two ways of how I look at it with your goals. Is that one, you obviously have to have one, because that starts off as like your roadmap, or your blueprint. Like you have your goal, and then now it's like, okay, how am I going to get to that goal? So I feel that you can't just do something without having a goal, whether it be short term or long term goals. So I find that that was very important. So like when I was working towards like anything I wanted to do, whether it was when I wanted to get into university, I'm like, hey, I'm going to get into university. I'm going to take this program. I want to be part of the varsity team. So these are the things I need to do to get there. After that, it went from, okay, you know what? I want to go to the Olympics. How am I going to get to the Olympics? Well, I need to do I know I have to train. I know I have to do proper recovery, have a proper coach, proper nutrition, all these different factors. So that goal kind of like sets you up, so that way then you can work towards something. The other side of it though is that, where I say, is being like, goals are important, but you have to be careful with your goals, that they don't become distractions. And the reason why I say that is that a lot of times that you set a goal, and it's easy to start to focus on that goal, and then all of a sudden neglect the process uh of achieving that goal. So now it becomes a distraction, because you're so fixated on the end point,
Mhm.
where the
Mhm.
focus needs to be on the process. And that's what I would do, is that I always was process driven, rather than the goal was my motivator, but my focus was always on the process to get there.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is really important. I'm hearing you say, first of all, that the goal is the guiding light, which is what we talk about, right? In coaching, is that the vision for what you want, and then the small incremental steps to get there. If you had set a goal to go to the Olympics, and then, you aimed at that right away, as opposed to all the steps you took to get there, most people would face disappointment, right?
Yeah.
It's this, because you can't take leaps and bounds like that. But I love goal theory and all the ways that we succeed and fail at our goals. Like
Mhm.
me as an entrepreneur, same thing. Like I have goals and I have really big dreams, but every year it's about what are the steps I can take to get to one part of that goal, like closer to the end goal. Do you find there's studies that show that, 83% of people don't set goals? Is that, in your experience with your clientele, with who your coach, is that what people come like? Do they know what they want when they come to you?
That's the first thing. Like usually, if I'm working with an individual, I always ask them, especially like my line of work is a lot of athletes. I've dealt with other people outside of sport as well, but I always ask them like, what are you working towards? Like, what do you want to achieve? And I think that's the first foremost most important part is like, what do you want to do? Like, I find that if you can't identify that goal, then you're just kind of wandering and then you're lost. And so I
Mhm.
think for the most part for individuals, I mean, I've had individuals that have said, like, yeah, I want to go to the Olympics, but I'm not sure. And then that's where you start getting to the question, well, why aren't you sure? And like, and with that goal is something where it's like you have to be sure and you have to be committed because if you're unsure, then you're going to doubt yourself. And if you doubt yourself, then it's going to be hard to perform. So, yeah, most cases, anyone I speak with, we always outline what the goal is first and then we move forward.
Yeah, and I mean, when I say, I think that study, when they say people, 83% of people don't have goals or set goals, it means they have goals, they're just not aware of them. Because oftentimes we're being led by subconscious goals. Like you said,
Mm,
I want to, but what's in
mm,
that but, right? You have to
mm.
kind of see and tease out that resistance. So, so you came to coaching to become certified as a leadership performance coach. What's changed for you since?
Um, I think, well, I find that what I've learned so far in the program has really enhance my perspective in regard, or I guess my approach into speaking, into asking the right questions, and it's easy sometimes to fall. Like, I mean, I have over 20 years of experience in within sport and performance, so it's easy for people to be like, "Well, what would you do?" or "What did you do?" But
Mm,
and I mean, I would always get them to be like, "Well, what would you do?" But I do fall into the especially my athletes, because I do really care. And I find that experience is very important. And it's very important to share those experiences with others because I feel that our stories and our experiences is how people overcome and are inspired and motivated. So, um, but yeah, it's helped my perspective where I fall back on giving advice and giving my perspective while there's still value in it and but focus on trying to get their perspective and what do they think. And you'd be surprised at, realizing even more and more that people actually have the answer. They just need to be asked the right questions and have the right engagement with the right intentions
mm.
for them to discover that.
So how are you putting that like to use before the program compared to now? Like,
um, I think one of the biggest things I think I've taken from the program that I'm doing actually is more active listening. Like I was intentional with my active listening, but I find that now it's increased that much more where um taking the moment to really pause a lot more so I can absorb a lot more and then not being although I'm not really quick to respond, but like delaying that a bit more. So I think my active listening skills and then um really pushing for them to discover the answer themselves, like when it comes to setting that goal.
so many people say their listening skills are were like the thing that changed.
Mhm,
It's funny because we're taught to hear, I think. I don't know that we're taught to listen, which is
mhm.
very different. Hearing is passive, listening is active. Um, And so, what is it that you like? What's your big dream, I guess, for your future now?
My big dream eventually is to so I will eventually transition from being a manual therapist, like treating. I still enjoy that. However, there is an expiry date, at least for me, just because like it can be take a toll on the body.
Mm.
Um, the coaching part, like the athletic coaching, I still really enjoy that. So I don't think I'll necessarily give that up. But long term, the goal is to transition into speaking, like more public speaking and coaching as well. So whether it be one-on-one, whether it be in team environments, like helping programs with their leadership, culture, and performance, and bringing my experience and my experiences as well into that. So this is just another tool in my toolbox that just holistically enhances me as an individual to be that much more effective. So
Hmm.
yeah, hopefully I answered that question. But yeah, long term is to really get into speaking coaching. So whether it be sporting systems, corporate, um, small teams, I'm trying to get involved in all that while still being active in the fitness sport performance world as well too.
Okay. So for speaking, what is it that you speak about? What is your passion?
So when I speak, most of my stuff is on like the topics are kind of like my journey as
Hmm.
an athlete. The things that it's not even so much focused on what I've done as an athlete, but it's more so about the process that I went through to get there, the things I endured, the things I had to overcome, and how I overcame that. And what I try to do is anytime I have an event or I speak, I try to relate my story or tell my story in a way that it connects and relates with other individuals. So, like, for example, I experienced disappointment. And when I experienced that disappointment, I went through all these emotions of, I was sad, I was angry, I was frustrated, how all these different emotions that I turned to individuals and asked them, when you have worked really hard towards something and you didn't get the result you wanted, how did that feel as well? So I find that the moment I ask them that, then they see the connection. Whereas, like, you know what? Even though he might be considered like an elite level, he was an elite level athlete, or at a certain point, we still experience emotion the same. We still, we bleed the same when we get cut. So it creates that connection to know that it's like, I'm not better than you, you're not better than me, but we're the same individuals trying to achieve something. And we still, we experience the same types of emotions when we're trying to achieve something, whether it be good emotions or bad emotions.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, Susan David says there's no good or bad emotion. It's just emotion,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And also, yeah, like I think what you're saying is the human experience is so similar. We're all human, right? This idea. So that's really neat. That must be very inspiring. Have you done a lot of speaking engagements?
Oh yeah, I've been speaking. I think my first experience of speaking was like 2007, and then 2009 I started to do a lot more, and then it just kind of went from there. So I mean, I started off, I think, doing schools, so
Mm,
anywhere from elementary all the way to high school, some university. Actually started doing a lot of university, and then I started to do a lot more corporate events,
mm.
whether it be for government events or other companies. But yeah, so I have a broad range, but yeah, I've been doing it for a while now.
Okay.
Mm,
So I heard you mention going over some rough patches or, and resilience, I think is kind of what you're getting to. I personally think that being coached is actually building resilience. When you're
mm,
coached and you're asked to talk about your failure, the F word of coaching and say,
mm.
how did, what did you overcome? How did you overcome that? Learning, correcting from failure. What do you think is, the mental toughness? Like, how do you build mental toughness?
I think, I think everyone's different in regards to mental toughness. There are individuals that need facilitation from someone else in order to help them overcome it, whether it be a psychologist or a coach or whoever. And then there are individuals that um, have that intrinsic drive and motivation and will to be able to help themselves through it. I think one of the biggest things for me that helped build up my mental toughness was the understanding that um, failure happens,
Mm,
especially when you're working towards doing something you're passionate about, big goals when you're working towards big goals. But yeah, I find that yeah, failure is inevitable, but there is great value in failure because some of the best lessons that you can ever experience and learn is from experiencing failure. So I think when I came to that, for me, that kind of, I don't know if you'd call it epiphany or, but when I came to that conclusion, it was easier for me to not worry about if I'm going to experience failure, if I work towards something new or different. And from there, I just kind of, it built me up. And then also too, I mean, I've always been like, especially like with my competitors, like I was always a very fierce competitor. And regardless of if the odds were against me, where if I wasn't, say I wasn't at 100%, but somehow I'm able to dig in internally and pull something out when it really counted. So
Mm. Sounds like grit. Angela Duckworth talks about grit, and it's different than talent, isn't it? You can have talent, but without
yeah,
grit, I think, you won't go as far as the person who has the grit.
yeah,
Which is so interesting to me. And, so the mental toughness that we talk about, like the growth mindset is, what would you say about growth mindset? Like for me, it's something you have to work at every day, but you become like, I guess it's just, I mean, you were exposed as an athlete. I've been exposed as an entrepreneur. Like the more that you fail, the more that you see you can get past the failure, and the more that you see failure teaches you, I think the more resilient we get, right? This growth mindset becomes, okay, what's the opportunity instead of why is this happening to me? What are your thoughts on that?
biggest thing I think for growth mindset is you can't be complacent with where you are.
Mm,
And um, I think it's important that, for example, when it comes to growth, because obviously you gotta set goals when you're trying to grow, but making sure that the goals you set aren't fear limiting goals, where they're not based on fear, because then that you won't really
mm,
set those really powerful big goals. And like, you know, um, all the goals that I would set for myself were ones that like I knew it was going to be very hard to achieve. But and if I didn't achieve it, I always ask myself, especially when I experience failure and stuff that like in the whole process of growth, failure, all that stuff, I always ask myself, well, what did I learn from it and from this opportunity, so that I'm growing. And then one of the big things I would always do is that create an imbalance of positive to negative. So if I had a fail experience of failure or a poor experience, um, I always have to ask myself, okay, well, what positive can I pull from that? So for every one negative, I had to create the imbalance of two positives. And then
mm.
that's something that I always did. So then that way, then even though there might be a bunch of negatives, the positive always outweighed that. So that was a part of my personal growth and I guess my mindset of how I was able to kind of progress and move forward.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting human study to see how people relate to failure. Like I
Mm,
think I heard you say earlier that the moment that you saw failure as an opportunity was an epiphany. And, we're so used to running from failure. And yet, for me, again, in my journey, I have noticed that I actually have lately been saying to my team, if we're going to fail, let's fail fast because I want to
mm,
learn as much as I can from this and correct myself, right? So the idea of failure to me is actually an opportunity to learn, as you said, to grow, to change, to pivot, to do, to see what's next. And I think that a lot of people coming to coaching actually have such a fear of failure that it's
mm,
limiting, as you said, it limits their
mm.
goals, it limits what they think they're capable of. So what's your greatest wish for humanity when you think about coaching and the role that you could play?
My greatest wish, I think my greatest wish would be that people start to realize, well, there's a few things, but people realizing the potential that they have within them. A lot of
Mm,
times people don't realize how much they have, and fear and doubt are the hinderers of them being able to accomplish certain things. So I think that's one thing. It's like, yeah, realizing your potential, and then realizing also in the end, everyone is looking for some type of authentic connection that, you hear me, you see me, you understand me. And I think that if, people, we could start doing a lot more of that and having those authentic connections, I feel that it would, help a lot of people. And then also, I guess the last part would be sharing your experiences and your stories. Like, we don't realize how much of an impact our experiences and our stories have. And I've heard people say, "Well, I don't have a story." I'm like, everyone has a story. For the fact that you're here, I'm sure there's something that you had to overcome, and no matter how big or small it might seem to you, that small um, victory that you had could be a really big victory for someone else that hears it. That they you share that with them and to help them and inspire them to overcome.
Mhm. Well, speaking of stories, part of your story is being an Olympian, and we're actually in Olympic season now
Yeah, yeah.
with the Summer Olympics in Paris. What is that like for you watching this go on as a previous athlete representing Canada?
I mean, I think I find like this Olympics, I tried to pay attention a lot more to the different sports. It's always nice to see individuals achieve different um, new and different feats of strength, speed, skill. So I enjoyed that. I mean, I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't. It didn't make me miss it a little bit of being out there and competing, and just I get to it makes me reflect back to when I was competing as well too. So I have
Mm.
those moments where that itch kind of comes up in me to want to experience that again. But I do enjoy watching, and I enjoy, also if I can be a part of like helping other athletes um, achieve that goal as well
Oh
too.
yeah. Oh, that'd be so fun.
Mm.
So what's it like walking into I guess in Vancouver it would have been, was it a stadium? I can't remember now.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah. For the
what's it
opening
like?
ceremonies.
Yeah.
So, and I always get asked this question, and sometimes
Mhm.
when I reflect, the answer changes sometimes. But I just remember like when I was walking in there, like in my head, I was like, I can't believe this is like happening. Like I'm actually here. Like it's one of those things like even though I knew I made the team, I was at the Olympics, you have all your gear and your clothing that you're wearing. But to me, it was kind of like I'm looking around and I was like, man, like I actually I got here, like all that hard work, time and effort, the blood, the sweat, the tears that year. I'm here. And I think that I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me was the Canadian, like the support. Canadian support from family and friends. Like I just remember being flooded with messages, like even people that I haven't heard from how long. And I had this one old teammate from track who sent me a message. It was like, Neville, I heard you're at the Olympics. I'm making my way up there right now. And
Ah,
like
nice.
yeah, so I was kind of yeah. So for me was like, yeah, that feeling of pride and and achievement and the thought of like, you know what? I can accomplish anything now.
Mm. And tell me about like the after, because a lot of, people think goals are destinations, but in fact,
Mhm.
it's progress. There's not an
Mhm.
end point, because after the Olympics, the sun rises and you get up and you have to go again. What is that like? Like I remember in an interview, Simone Biles was talking about a bit of a depression that sets in after all of that,
Yeah.
intense emotion. What was it like for you?
So for me, I mean, after, and I think this is a common thing. Like, I mean, I think at some point they might have to term it as a like have a certain term for it. But you work so hard towards something, and like years and years, and you finally get there or achieve it, whether you medal or not, but you get there, and then after there's a bit of a high for a bit, then all of a sudden it just drops off.
Mm,
And for some individuals, they're like, now what? What do I do next? Others is like, okay, now we're time to reset and do it again. So for me, after the first Olympics, like, I rode the high for a bit. And then it was like, hey, so what's next, Neville? What do you want to do? And I was like, all right, let's run it back and go for another one.
Mm,
So then yeah, and that's what I did. Like I started to train again for another Olympics.
mm,
So yeah, I think it was maybe my last Olympics or my second last Olympics where I just yeah, I don't it's almost like sometimes you go into this void of like uncertainty. And for me, I started thinking about like life after sport. Like, 'cause I know this isn't going to last forever. And I wanted to make sure I transitioned well, even though I know I had a degree, I had all these other certifications and everything like that. It was still challenging after like my last Olympics and knowing that I was going to retire. It was kind of like you almost have like you lose a sense of purpose, and you have a bit of that emptiness in you just because you were so focused and goal driven and working towards something, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. Like my life has changed now. Like now what's next now? So
mm-hmm.
I was fortunate to start to find some other things, but yeah, I would say it was still difficult like making that transition.
Well, a lot of athletes I mean,
Mhm.
but anybody, I mean, even when people retire, right?
Mhm.
Now what?
Yeah.
This idea that progress equals happiness, I think is so important to grasp because those things that we achieve don't last. There's always, I
Mm.
mean, I think it was Kobe Bryant who said somebody asked him, "What do what's what's your favorite? What is it? What was your favorite part of the game? Winning or something?" Anyway, he ended up saying his answer was, "It doesn't really matter win or lose because you still have to get up and do it again the next day. So you can
Mhm.
ride that high, but life goes on."
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people come to coaching in times of transition,
Mhm.
right? Transitions are tough, especially when you're leaving something behind.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, like, you must be, especially because you said I think part of your work is therapeutic, right? And so maybe injury recovery. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
part of your,
Yeah.
I know what it's like to be injured. Not that I'm an athlete, but I ran for most of my life, and then I had knee issues that couldn't run anymore. And that was hard. That was like my body gave up on me. I was kind of angry at my body, to be honest.
Mm.
How does that, how do you see that playing out in your role? What are you doing to work with people through those mental glitches or those mental setbacks?
So I find like so as a therapist, like so I do manual therapy, like very goal-oriented therapy. Like, I'm not treating the symptom. I'm trying to get to the root of the problem.
Mm,
So I guess it's more performance-based, but I find that in those sessions, because I'm also providing like exercise-based rehabilitation as well too. But in those sessions, it ends up being like a bit of a coaching session because a lot of the people that come see me, they know my background, or like they look up, and then they'll ask me questions and perspective on things. So during those sessions, like it becomes, to tell you the truth, I found that I end up coaching quite a bit when I'm treating. I remember I had one patient where they're having issues with their knee. They couldn't really bend their knee. And they're like, I don't think I'll ever be able to do that. I'm like, no, 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 we're gonna get there. And it was like, I'm like, you stop that self-sabotage and that doubt, like we're gonna get there, and I'm gonna help you and do what I can to. And then I remember going like treating, and I find that even though the manual part I think played a factor, I found that that coaching component played a big role for them because then I remember they were putting on their shoes, and then they started to tear up. I'm like, you okay? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, I haven't been able to do this for how long? And then they went from, using a support device to walk around to like using like a cane to all of a sudden no support at all, and just and walking on their own. And
wow.
I find that like I said, I think that there's obviously a component of therapy that helped, but I find that there's a component of that coaching where getting them to believe in themselves and reaffirming that they're going to be able to do this. I find that that played a big factor, which that's the part of therapy that I really enjoy as well, and that's rewarding
Mm,
to me, is to see people come in Like obviously, I don't want to see people come in hopeless, but like they come in with like down on themselves, not a lot of hope, and then they leave reassured that I'm going to be okay. I can do this.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's such a great story. Are there any other stories that stand out for you, like overcoming huge challenges that you've helped people through?
Well, I mean, like I said, in the areas of like my coaching, my speaking, my therapy, even my coaching athletes, like I had one athlete that I worked with, where I remember when I saw them, I was on my way out, but I remember seeing this athlete and I'm like, this athlete's gonna be like the next star and they're gonna go to the Olympics. And I don't think there was a lot of people that believed it. And I started working with this athlete, like training, and we trained, I think we were together for 2, 3 years, and then they ended up going to the Olympics.
Mm,
And I think there's, like I said, during that session, it wasn't just about the physical training, but there was also a coaching component where I was pushing them to be a lot more accountable
mm,
for their actions, how they work towards these goals, and I found that's and maybe that's where also the passion to wanting to get more into that came from as well. But like asking them questions and questions I'd ask kind of like after everything that you said to me, what's the one thing that's that you have control of the most?
mm,
And they said themselves. So knowing that now that you have the most control, like what can you do to improve that, to gain more control? And just asking these questions and my coaching style, which actually works really well with leadership performance coaching, but my coaching style of I try to create non-coach dependent athletes where if
yeah.
I'm not there, they can figure it out. They can know the cueing. Like, so I provide them as much information. We work through as much, some problem solving, whatever it may be, that when I'm not there, they're good on their own. And I
Mm,
find that's kind of very similar as an actual coach where, you're not solving the problem for them. You're not creating a situation where you have to hold their hand the entire time and they can't succeed without you, but you're trying to create a situation that they can do it on their own, like that you don't have to be with them every step of the way. So
no,
at least
that's so
that's what
cool.
I found. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that is so cool to hear you say that. And so that brings me, it actually reminds me of a question I had earlier, which I didn't ask you. Everybody kind of accepts that athletes have coaches, right? Of
Mhm.
course, athletes have a coach,
Yeah.
nobody has to make that leap in their minds. But a lot of people say, why would I hire a coach for, I don't know, building a business or achieving another goal? What do you say to that? Like, what is the benefit of a coach?
I think a coach is important because one, they provide perspective because then if I don't have a coach, if I didn't have a coach, I'd only be going off the information that I know and my perspective, where my coach, who's trained in that area, is able to provide perspective that I was like, oh, I never thought of it that way. But the one great thing, and I always, anytime I talk about my coach, I always have to like, give him his flowers and praise for how he coached me because I would do, for example, I'd go do a sprint. When I come back, he'd give me feedback. But then, and I liked how he provided that feedback. So then I would actually stand beside him and I'd listen to how he's giving feedback to everyone else. Then he created this environment where he's like, what did you see? What was that guy doing?
Mm,
How can you improve? And then he'd ask me questions. Like it got to a point where it wasn't like so much of Neville, you need to do this. Like obviously as a coach, he's like, okay, Neville, watch your hip with this, or that. But then I come back and you say, well, what did you feel? What did you notice?
mm,
I did this. Okay. So you did that. So what do you need to do? I need to change this position or make sure I'm more disciplined in this area. Okay. So let me see it now.
mm,
So it was great with him. So yeah, I think that a coach is so important because a coach does provide, like I said, provides perspective, provides experience, and it's just another set of ears or eyes that's outside of your own that can be very, very beneficial, which was beneficial to me.
Yeah, I mean, you said it so well. Like it is that we can't see that part of ourselves, right? We can't
Mm,
know and see and observe everything that someone else could see and observe and mirror back to us. So I think it's like really neat that you were doing that before,
mm,
and it kind of for me reaffirms the strategies in our coaching,
mm.
courses. So so tell me, what was the experience like for you being in our coach certification?
Um, so at first, I was a little nervous at first just because well, no, let me go back. I was actually really excited, like really excited in the beginning. I got a little bit nervous because like, man, am I gonna fall behind because I am doing multiple things.
Hmm.
And but then when for me, like the simplicity of like the certain templates where I'm like, man, like I do this, but then it was refining what I was doing already, like in regards to giving me more perspective. And um I'm realizing that my coaching style, some of my things that I do has changed quite a bit. Even the questions, like I'll be in a conversation and it's not like I'm throwing on my coaching hat, but the questions I'm asking, kind of like work, like say, like I have a friend that we're working through something, or they're working through something, but the things that I would ask and just real, I'm a lot cleaner with my questions, and yeah, I find that I'm really excited to when I make that making that transition and doing more of this coaching, like I feel that, I have a lot to bring and I feel that like just from experiences and I feel that from this course is going to make me that much more of an effective coach.
You're making me think because we have other athletes in our community as well.
Mm.
And one of them, he was a, champion jockey,
Okay.
and traveled the world. Was actually the most championed jockey of Canada in Canada. Like won the
Oh,
most
wow.
prizes in his weight group, I guess, or whatever they classify them as. But
Mm.
he retired a couple of years ago and became a mindset coach for athletes who are, either training or even athletes transitioning from a career in athletics to something else. And you're making me think about like, is there, maybe there already is, but is there an organization or training for coaches of athletics who can use the approach that we teach in our program? And very much what you're talking about you were doing before, which is that asking the client, like, be the athlete that doesn't need, you're okay when the coach isn't there.
Mm.
Is there some avenue for that, or does it already exist?
Um, I mean, there's a lot of different coaching programs out there. I was on this quest of like self-development, but also like ways to improve like my like speaking, for example. So there's a different programs out there, but I feel like for me personally, I feel like I've used every interaction that I've had as a learning opportunity. So
Mm,
every interaction, everything I've learned from school, from different programs, and then what I've done is kind of like combined it with my experience, and then almost like I don't know if I'd call it like a niche, but like I don't think I would say there's an actual structured program per se, but there's bits and pieces and parts of programs around. But
mm-hmm.
the like but there is some overlap. But I would say with this program that I'm in, I like where there's a bit more of a structure to follow. And I find that those programs that have structures that where stages, like you go through these stages, it simplifies it rather than also always having other information. So you kind of like know where to start and where to finish, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've read a book recently called The Mindful Athlete, George Mumford. Have you
Mm,
read that?
mm.
Yeah,
I
that
haven't
was
read, but I know of it yet.
yeah. It was really interesting, and again, the role that the mind played. But there's also, the inner game of tennis, the inner game of golf. That's a very coach approach way, like, of approaching people and athletics. So anyway, it's really neat to hear that your approach with people, and you see the benefit of, like, the client is the expert in their own life. The client knows, and the way that you were coached, it sounds like that was a very big approach. Speaking of which, do you have any mentors that you really, you've turned to in your life?
I'll be honest. Like as I was coming up as an athlete, my mentors were more so. I don't know if I'd say mentors per se. Like my coach obviously was like a mentor for me, where him creating that an environment for me to learn to be a better coach, even the way how he'd give feedback. And that's the thing too. A lot of the stuff that his approach with a lot of things wasn't so much of education, but it was a lot of it was also experience.
Mm.
And his experience provided yeah, just his experience with his engagement with others. And that's what I was saying, like with the course of it being refined, but like of refining your experience so that you can actually follow a certain structure. But in regards to mentors, I would say more so it was just more so conversations and interaction with people. So my coach, and then when I wanted to become a therapist, I I was fortunate to be around different therapists from around the world and some like the best therapists. So my sessions were learning sessions from them. So when I'm on the table, I wasn't just laying down like a lot of times, for example, people are like, oh man, as an athlete, you're just getting this nice massage. There's nothing nice about this massage. Like they're putting in work in. But while I'm on there, I'm asking questions. Okay, why are you doing this? What's the point of this? When would you do this? And I use every one of those engagement as an opportunity of learning. So I could be like, yeah, all those individuals were my mentor, but I would say it's more so I had a lot of, I guess, coaches, whether it be a therapist or who, my actual training coach, or in my life that I've interacted that have provided um the space for me to learn and to grow as an individual.
Hmm. Interesting. So, I mean, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I don't even know, to be honest. I was lost in the conversation. I don't even know how long we've been doing this. But I guess to end here today, what would you want to tell people who might be struggling, who might be wanting to achieve something and not sure what to do? Like, what would you tell them right now if you could say something inspiring?
I would say that one is that you need to identify, like really identify what you really want to do and why you want to do it. It's not even so much about the what, it's the why. Why
Mm.
do I want to do this? Why do I want to achieve this? Why do I want to connect with people or coach? And I think when you discover the why, the how, the what, everything else will be a lot easier to understand and to achieve. So I think, and I mean, it might sound cliche, but yeah, knowing the why is so important. And then the why, after the why, the how. How am I going to do this then? And then also use your network, your resources, people around you, like engage with them, like ask questions, like be one of the things I always hear in the program is to be very curious. And that's the same thing. Anytime you're trying to learn something, be as curious as possible. The more curious you are, the more questions you ask, the more you learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and have you had a chance to experience the community with the Canada Coach Academy? Like, apart from your classroom, have you engaged with the community?
I haven't yet. I've been trying to, but it's like I said, I find sometimes I have to squeeze things in just because I'm on the go and a lot of moving parts. But my plan is I am carving out some time so I can actually engage more with the community soon here.
Yeah, good. Well, it'd be really cool to see you in there. And I guess one more thing would be, well, I know that you get asked this in your class at the end, and so I'd love to hear your answer, which is, if you had one chance to put a message on a billboard, what would it be? Did you do that exercise in your class?
No,
You didn't
I don't remember. Maybe.
do that?
Yeah, I put it this way, my world gets so crazy and busy that sometimes I don't even know the what day it is of the
Yeah.
week. But if I was to put a message on the billboard, um, I would say, what would I say? Man, that's a good question.
It is. I stole
Because
it from Tim Ferriss, by the way.
there's so many things I could say that um you know I guess I would say give yourself grace.
Mm.
And the reason why I say this is that a lot of times when we're working towards something, we're so hard on ourselves. And we never, sometimes we don't always take the moment to give ourselves grace. It's easy for us to be negative to ourselves and talk down to ourselves, but it's hard to be positive and to give yourself grace that, you know what, I made a mistake. And yes, it hurts. I'm frustrated, but in the end, I'm going to pick myself up and keep going. So I would say, give yourself grace is what I would say. I think that we don't have enough people doing that nowadays. So,
Well, I love that. And I have to tell you, every year I pick a word that is sort of my theme for the year. I do this
hmm,
at the end of each year. And this year, my word is grace.
yeah.
So
All
I love
right.
that.
Okay.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. This is wonderful to get to know you and to hear your experiences and what you're doing in the world. And I wish you a tremendous amount of luck and best wishes in your endeavors with coaching and all the people that you're going to help. It's very exciting.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on this series.
Yeah, yeah, my
Uh,
pleasure.